homeless man was challenged to solve an impossible equation by a millionaire who wanted to mock him. But his answer stunned everyone. On one of the wealthiest avenues in the city, beneath the indifferent gaze of luxury cars and glittering storefronts, lives Jonas, a quiet black man, weathered by time and the streets. No one knows where he came from. No one asks. One day, during a flashy charity event filled with arrogant CEOs and influencers, a young millionaire named Ottavio, Dantes famous online for flaunting his intellect, spots Jonas sitting quietly on the sidewalk. With a mocking smile, he approaches with his entourage. If you're as wise as you pretend to be, solve this equation. Using a piece of chalk, he scribbles a complex math problem onto the pavement, one he himself had failed to solve months earlier and now uses to humiliate others. Jonas calmly looks at the equation, closes his eyes, and begins to write. Not only does he solve it, he explains it, with flawless logic and a depth that leaves the entire crowd in stunned silence. But what truly breaks the silence isn't the correct answer. It's what Jonas says afterward. Locking eyes with Ottavio, life is an equation you rich folks still haven't learned to solve, to divide. The moment goes viral. News outlets uncover the truth. Jonas was once a respected university professor, believed dead. After a tragic accident and mysterious disappearance, now he must choose: return to the spotlight as a symbol of redemption, or remain among the forgotten, where he found something no money could buy: freedom, humility, and truth. Meanwhile, Ottavio begins his own journey, forced to face the fragility of his ego and the injustice of the world he helped build. The Equation of Life, Chapter 1. The silence of the sidewalk, and the ephemeral ostentation in the cold sidewalk of one of the city's most opulent avenues. Beneath the indifferent gaze of passing luxury cars and the gleaming shop windows displaying unattainable fortunes, lived Jonas, a black man whose presence was as discreet as the air he breathed, figured not only by time but by the relentless hardships of the streets. His face, marked by invisible scars, told stories no one deigned to ask about. No one knew where he came from. No one cared to know. To the hurried world passing by, Jonas was just the homeless man, a fixed element in the urban landscape, as much a part of the scenery as the nearest lamppost. His gaze, however, held a serene depth, reflecting a wisdom that life far from social conventions had taught him. He observed. He saw the superficiality dripping from expensive suits and fake smiles, the incessant rush for a happiness that money, he knew, could not buy. Life on the streets was tough, yes, but free from the hypocrisy he saw in the windows of luxury cars, far away. In an exuberant hall, where champagne bubbled in crystal glasses and the echo of empty laughter filled the air, Ottavio Dantes was the center of attention. Young, handsome, and ostentatiously rich, Ottavio was a new era millionaire. Known for flaunting his intelligence and fortune on social media, collecting followers and admirers in a cult of image and success, his eyes, accustomed to the glare of spotlights, constantly sought approval, a validation that no amount of money seemed able to fill. He was a digital titan, and the philanthropic event he was attending was just another stage for his carefully orchestrated performance, a way to display his generosity and, of course, his power. But the night held a cruel irony. As the event unfolded, Ottavio, in a moment of boredom and arrogance, saw Jonas sitting on the sidewalk outside, the living image of the disdain he felt for those below. A door-mocking smile twisted his lips. Surrounded by his retinue of followers and influencers, he decided to turn Jonas's misery into a personal spectacle, a joke for his audience. He approached the homeless man, his polished shoes stepping onto the dirty pavement, an invasion into a world he barely knew. The clash between the two universes was palpable, and the stage was set for a confrontation neither expected. Chapter 2. The Mocking. Challenge and the calm of the forgotten genius. The air around Jonas grew thick with the presence of Ottavio Dantes and his entourage. The scent of expensive perfume and arrogance hung over the homeless man, a stark contrast to the smell of rain. an asphalt. Ottavio, his voice laden with mockery and his eyes gleaming with the malice of one preparing a trick, extended his hand, not to help, but to scoff. "If you're as wise as you pretend to be," began, his voice echoing so his followers could hear, ... solve this equation. On the stone ground, with a piece of chalk he pulled from his suit pocket, Ottavio drew a complex mathematical calculation. It wasn't just any equation. It was something he himself had failed to solve months earlier. Intricate challenge of quantum physics and complex algorithms. Something he used as a joke against other intellectuals, a way to prove his superiority, Ottavio's. A crowd of followers gathered, their cell phones raised to film the spectacle. They expected the homeless man's confusion, his shame, proof that Jonas's wisdom was a sham. But Jonas, the man who had lost everything but his dignity, remained silent. He looked at the formula drawn on the ground, his serene eyes scanning, the complex symbols, the equations that mocked his condition. There was no fear in his gaze, only a calm that disarmed Ottavio's arrogance. Time seemed to stop. The city's noise faded into a distant hum, everyone's attention fixed on Jonas. With a deliberate slowness that held the crowd's breath, Jonas picked up the piece of chalk. His calloused, dirty fingers were precise. He closed his eyes for an instant, as if accessing an invisible library in his mind. And then, without any hesitation, he began to write on the ground, beside Ottavio's equation. He didn't just solve it, he explained it, with impeccable reasoning and a depth that silenced the entire crowd. Line by line, symbol by symbol, Jonas unraveled the mathematical mystery, his handwriting firm and clear, his voice which no one had heard before. Murmuring the solution with a fluidity that shocked, he was an unexpected genius. The stage of mockery had become the stage of his unexpected glory. Chapter 3. The Unexpected Answer and the Equation of Life. The silence on the avenue was absolute, broken only by the sound of chalk scratching the ground and the astonished murmuring of the crowd. Jonas had solved Ottavio's impossible calculation. And not only that, he had explained it with a clarity and depth that disarmed the millionaire's arrogance. Ottavio Dantas's expression transformed from mockery to shock, then to disbelief, and finally to a consuming shame. His joke had turned against him, and the wise homeless man had revealed himself to be a superior intellect. Ottavio's followers, their cell phones still recording, captured not the homeless man's humiliation, but that of their idol. But what truly broke the silence and touched the deepest part of Ottavio's soul was not the correct answer to the equation. It was what Jonas said at the end after finishing the explanation. He lifted his gaze from the ground, his serene eyes meeting Ottavio's with a firmness that made him tremble. Life is an equation you rich people still haven't learned to solve, to divide. That phrase, simple, yet brutally true, hit Ottavio like a lightning bolt, laying his soul bare before everyone. It wasn't just a social critique, it was a revelation, an invitation for him to look beyond his fortune and find a value money couldn't buy. The crowd, which had been laughing, was now silent, impacted by the wisdom that had emerged from the sidewalk. The video of the scene went viral in minutes. Millions of people watched Ottavio's humiliation and Jonas's wisdom. Journalists, eager for a story, began investigating the genius homeless man's past. What they discovered shook the city. Even more profoundly, Jonas was not just a homeless man. He was, years ago, a renowned university professor of mathematics and physics, presumed dead after a car accident and a mysterious disappearance that he had deliberately orchestrated to escape a world that didn't understand his passion for truth. He had chosen the freedom of the streets over the hypocrisy of academia. Now the world knew him, and Jonas needed to decide: accept the invitation to return to the top as a symbol of triumph, or remain on the streets, where he found something even the richest don't have: freedom, humility, and truth. Life was the most complex equation of all, and Jonas, the wise homeless man, had found his own solution. A homeless man's mind has shocked a millionaire and revealed a universal truth. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this saga of redemption and wisdom that comes from the most unexpected places. Hit like if you were also touched by Jonas's phrase, and believe in the power of division and compassion. Share this video so more people can be inspired by this powerful story that makes us question the true value of life. Comment below. Do you think Jonas will choose to return to the top or remain on the streets? What's your equation of life? The Equation of Life, Chapter 4, Silent Humiliation and the Light in Ottavio's. Darkness. Jonas's revelation at the public traffic light was an earthquake for Ottavio Dantas. The humiliation of being unmasked by a homeless man in front of his own followers and the press now voraciously covering the story was unbearable. His world of appearances crumbled. The video of Jonas solving the impossible calculation and uttering the cutting phrase, "Life is an equation you rich people still haven't learned to solve," to divide went viral globally, transforming Ottavio into a symbol of arrogance and futility. Social media, once his stage, was now a tribunal condemning him. Ricardo Dantas, Ottavio's father and an even more powerful magnate, intervened to try and control the damage, but the repercussions were immense. Contracts were canceled. Influencers distanced themselves, and the Dantas family's reputation, once impeccable, was stained. Ottavio, accustomed to a life of flattery, found himself alone. The luxury of his mansion felt like a cage, and the silence, which he had always hated, was filled with the echo of Jonas's phrase. Shame was a physical pain, and anger, a fire-consuming him. In his darkness, however, something began to change in Ottavio. He mentally revisited the scene on the sidewalk, Jonas's serene gaze, the clarity of his words. He saw the coldness of his own ambition, the emptiness that wealth didn't fill. It was a faint light, an unease, but it was something. He began to question himself, to doubt everything he believed. The humiliation Jonas inflicted on him didn't destroy him. It began to free him, forcing him to confront the loneliness his money had built and the unequal world he helped perpetuate. Chapter 5. The Shadow of Fame and the Dive into the Invisible World. Jonas's sudden fame as the genius homeless man attracted everyone's attention. Journalists sought him out incessantly. Cameras followed him, and proposals for books, lectures, and interviews flooded his new territory on the streets. For Jonas, who had chosen invisibility to escape hypocrisy, the attention was a burden. He didn't want to return to the top. He'd found freedom and truth in a simple life, in genuine connection with the forgotten. Money and fame, he knew, were poisons that corroded the soul. While Jonas dealt with his unexpected notoriety, Ottavio Dantas, the humiliated millionaire, made a drastic and secret decision. Desperate to understand Jonas's words and perhaps find a path to his own redemption, he decided to infiltrate the world of the forgotten. He dressed in simple clothes, abandoned his luxury cars, and began walking through the neighborhoods he and his family had always ignored. The smell of misery, the noise of busy streets, the suspicious glances of residents, everything was new to him. A cultural shock that stripped him of his old certainties. His first contact came through Maria, charismatic nun who distributed food in the early mornings. Ottavio observed her from afar, impressed by the dignity and compassion with which she treated everyone. He approached her humbly, offering volunteer help, not money. Maria, accustomed to seeing the coldness of those from above, noticed something different in Ottavio's gaze, a sincerity that surprised her. She accepted him as another volunteer, unaware of his true identity. And Ottavio began his journey of learning in the real world, a world where people's worth wasn't measured by fortune, but by clean hands and an open heart. Chapter 6. Dirty Hands. And the wisdom of survived Ottavio's life on the streets, alongside Maria the nun, was a daily lesson in humility. He, who had never gotten his hands dirty, now carried boxes of food, served hot meals, and cleaned makeshift shelters. The physical exhaustion was immense, but with each passing day, he felt a strange lightness, a peace his billions couldn't buy. Maria, unaware of his past, taught him about the dignity of the forgotten, the strength of the community, and the resilience of the human spirit. He saw hope flourish amidst poverty and solidarity amidst helplessness. On his nightly rounds, Ottavio met Leono, a 10-year-old black boy with a captivating smile and bright eyes, who lived by collecting cardboard and cans to support his sick grandmother. Ottavio felt an instant connection with Lionel, a purity that reminded him of his own childhood, before his family's greed and coldness transformed him. He began helping Lionel, not with direct money, but with small jobs the boy could do, paying him a fair wage, ensuring he and his grandmother had food and a little more comfort. Lionel's gaze, full of gratitude and hope, was a powerful motivating force for the millionaire. Still on his journey of self-discovery, Ottavio had a casual encounter with Donna Need, a neighbor of Lionel, a pregnant woman who cared for 3 children with no government assistance. Donna Need, with her silent strength and unwavering determination, represented the resilience of the women in that community. She spoke of the difficulty of raising children in a world that ignores them, but also of the faith and unity that kept them going. Ottavio felt a pang in his chest, an empathy he had never felt before. The humility, dignity, and truth he found on the streets were what he never had with all his money. The cliffhanger was the imminent final reckoning, an encounter that would define Ottavio's legacy. Forcing him to choose between appearance and the family he was discovering, Ottavio Dantas is in the world of the forgotten, and his journey of redemption is just beginning. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this inspiring saga of transformation and social justice. Hit like if you're also impressed by Ottavio's change and the power of street wisdom. Share this video so more people can dive into this tale of humility, dignity, and the true value of life. Comment below. What do you think Ottavio will learn from Lionel and Donna Need? Will he find Jonas again? Chapter 7. The Face of Reconciliation and the Shadow of the Past Ottavios. Presence on the streets didn't go unnoticed by everyone. Although he was disguised, his figure stood out, and his inner transformation didn't entirely hide the decades of a privileged life. Curiosity and distrust still hung over him, especially from those who knew the Dantas family's reputation. But what he had learned from Maria, Lionel, and Donna Need prepared him for the approaching truth. Humility had disarmed him, making him capable of seeing and feeling the world he once ignored. He felt that with each day on the streets, with each gesture of compassion he received, he was drawing closer to the answer Jonas had given him at the beginning. Life is about dividing. Driven by this new understanding, Ottavio felt the need to do more. He sought out the parents of Lara, a talented young woman whose social tech startup project had been stolen and destroyed by his family's company, Dantas Tech. Lara, a promising figure in the field, succumbed to depression after the incident and disappeared. Ottavio had signed the documents that sealed Lara's fate without even reading them, trusting his lawyers. Now, facing Lara's heartbroken parents in their modest home, he saw the pain his blind ambition had caused. Words were insufficient, but he confessed his part in their daughter's ruin, not apologizing, but taking responsibility. He promised to use everything he was learning, and whatever influence he still had, to honor Lara's legacy. Upon returning to the shelter, Ottavio saw a familiar figure waiting for him. Sister Clara, the nun, who had guided him on his previous journey, looked at him with a serene smile. Life has mysterious ways of making us pay the debts we think time has erased, doesn't it, my son? She said, her voice a balm and a truth. Ottavio knew she saw through his disguise and into his soul. The shadow of the past was catching up to him, and Sister Clara was the bridge to an even deeper reckoning. Chapter. The Price of Legacy and the Cry for Reparations. Clara's presence and her words, "Life has mysterious ways of making us pay the debts we think time has erased," served as a reminder that Ottavio's journey was grander than he had imagined. She hadn't come to judge him, but to guide him. Sister Clara, with her wisdom, led him to a dreaded encounter. In the periphery, at one of the social inclusion projects, he reconnected with David, the young engineer whose clean energy project had been crushed by Dantas Tech. David, now volunteering at the project, eyed Ottavio with distrust and resentment. Ottavio didn't hide. He confessed to David what he had done, his company's role in destroying his project and his dreams. He spoke of his blindness, his ambition, and the pain he now felt witnessing the consequences of his actions. David, who had harbored deep resentment against the elite, listened in silence. The anger was palpable, but something in Ottavio's humility and sincerity made him hesitate. He saw not the arrogant millionaire, but a broken man seeking redemption. David didn't immediately forgive him, but accepted Ottavio's proposal to use the Jonas Foundation, the equation of life and name adapted for the foundation Ottavio would create, connecting it to the wise homeless man to refund his clean energy, projecting to give a voice to other talents silenced by greed. The true cost of Ottavio's arrogance was being paid not in money, but in dignity and profound reparation. As Ottavio witnessed David's pain, he realized that his own father, the Dantas, family patriarch, had also neglected and crushed dreams in the name of power. His family's debt was immense. He felt the weight of the legacy he had inherited. Sister Clara and Sister Maria, a character from The Beggar and the Crying Millionaire script, if the connection is active, reminded him that redemption was not a destination, but a continuous journey, a daily construction. The seed of reparation was being planted, and the truth, though painful, was the only path to healing. Chapter 9. The Temptation of Power and the Voice of the Forgotten, the story of Ottavio Dantas. The broken millionaire redeeming himself on the streets began to go viral in the media, creating a frenzy of curiosity and debate. The press, once eager for his scandal, now followed him with a mix of skepticism and fascination. But this new fame brought a temptation. A group of former elite allies, desperate to revive Ottavio's and his father's businesses, sought him out. They offered him an opportunity to return to the top with a carefully orchestrated narrative, to clean his image and rebuild his empire, ignoring the past and the people he had harmed. It was the old world calling him back, the power. He knew so well Ottavio felt the temptation. The comfort of luxury, the familiarity of power, the promise of regaining what he had lost everything was seductive. But he looked at Maria's calloused hands, at Lionel's hopeful smile, at Donna Need's dignity, and at Jonas's wisdom. He remembered Jonas's phrase, "Life is an equation you rich people still haven't learned to solve, to divide." He knew that returning to the top with a lie would betray not only the people he now loved, but himself, the soul he was rebuilding. He no longer wanted the old life, wanted the truth, no matter the cost. In an act of courage that shocked everyone, Ottavio refused his old allies' offer about the ease of returning to the old world, but also about the peace he found in humility and service. His voice, once arrogant, now resonated with a conviction that silenced everyone. He announced that the foundation would expand, with programs for young talents like Lionel, housing projects for families like Donna Needs, and support for former teachers like Maria. The cliffhanger was the promise of a revolution, where tragedy transformed into a miracle of love and redemption, and mud became the soil for a new beginning. Chapter 10. The Final. Sacrifice and the Legacy of Truth. Ottavia's decision to reject the elite's offer and fully embrace his new path was an act of sacrifice few understood. His remaining fortune would be entirely dedicated to the Jonas Foundation, the equation of life. He would keep nothing for himself, living a simple life, side by side with the forgotten, who were now his family. The Dantas Tech Company, once the bastion of his power, to be restructured and converted into a social tech company, focused on solutions for the periphery's problems under the leadership of David, the young engineer whose project he had destroyed. It was his way of atoning for past wrongs and honoring Jonas's legacy. News of Ottavio Lacerda's sacrifice shocked the world. Newspapers, social media, and news channels reported his story, transforming him into a global symbol of redemption and material detachment. His former elite allies considered him an outcast, but the community, which once viewed him with suspicion, now embraced him as one of their own. He was the millionaire who learned to divide, living proof that compassion was the greatest wealth. Climax of Ottavio's journey occurs at a large charity event organized by the Jonas Foundation, the equation of life in the community's central square. Hundreds of people attended, local residents, foundation beneficiaries, the press, and important figures like Maria Leonel, Dona Need, Sister Clara, and Father Benedito. Ottavio took the stage. He didn't talk about numbers or charity, but told his story from his poor childhood, his blind ambition, his encounter with Jonas, the phrase that transformed him, and the path that led him to lose everything to gain himself. At the height of his speech, Jonas, the wise homeless man, approached the stage. He and Ottavio looked at each other, and Jonas, with a smile, extended his hand. Ottavio shook it, and in that moment, the miracle happened. Ottavio Dantas is at his lowest point, but an act of courage can change everything. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this saga of redemption and the legacy of the Jonas Foundation, the equation of life. Like, if you're also impressed by Ottavio's transformation and the power of street wisdom, share this video so more people can dive into this tale of sacrifice, truth, and the true value of life. Comment below. What do you think of Ottavio's choice? Will he find the peace he seeks by letting go of everything? Chapter 11. The New Wealth and the Legacy. That blossoms, the handshake between Ottavio and Jonas on stage at the event was more than a symbol. It was the seal of a transformation. Ottavio, stripped of his fortune and reputation, felt a peace that billions never gave him. His decision to convert Dantas Tech into a social technology company and to dedicate his life to the Jonas Foundation. The equation of life resonated throughout the country. The corporate world was in shock, but the world of the forgotten embraced him as one of their own. He had lost everything, but gained something infinitely more valuable: purpose. The Jonas Foundation flourished under the leadership of Ottavio, Jonas, and David, the young engineer Ottavio had helped destroy in the past. David, now a crucial partner, used his genius to develop technological solutions for the problems of the periphery: apps for education, accessible health platforms, clean energy systems for needy communities. The story of his redemption from victim to builder was a living testament to the power of forgiveness and second chances. Jonas, the wise homeless man, became the spiritual advisor in the face of the foundation. His calm, his wisdom, and the depth of his life experience inspired everyone. He spent his days in the square, not begging, but sharing his philosophy of dividing life, teaching that true wealth isn't in accumulating, but in lending a hand. Maria's early mornings, the nun who distributed food, were now filled with hundreds of foundation volunteers who followed Ottavio's example, bringing food and hope. Leonel, the boy who lived by collecting cardboard, thrived, became a young leader in the community, inspired by Ottavio and Jonas, using his intelligence to help his family and neighbors. Chapter 12. The Voice of Hope and the Confrontation. With the past the Jonas Foundation, the equation of life became a global phenomenon. The story of Ottavio, the millionaire who lost everything to find his soul, inspires companies, governments, and individuals to reevaluate their values. Ottavio, now a highly sought-after speaker, spoke at international conferences, not about the stock market, but about life, the importance of compassion, and social justice. His voice, once arrogant, now resonated with a humility and conviction that silenced everyone. He became an ambassador for change, an example that humans can rebuild themselves, even after the greatest of falls. However, Ottavio's rise brought with it one last unexpected confrontation. His father, Ricardo Dantas, the family patriarch and still powerful magnate, observed Ottavio's transformation with a mixture of fury and disbelief. Ricardo Dantas, who had crushed Lara's family and other projects in his relentless pursuit of power, couldn't stand the idea of his son dismantling the family legacy in the name of charity. He saw Ottavio's change as a betrayal, a weakness. Ricardo Dantas publicly confronted Ottavio, accusing him of being a lunatic, of destroying the family name. But Ottavio didn't back down, faced his father with the serenity he had learned on the streets. He spoke of the legacy of injustice he had received, of the hidden crimes that stained the Dantas fortune, the faces he had encountered and that his father had ignored. It was a final reckoning, not just between father and son, but between two philosophies of life: greed versus compassion, appearance versus truth. Chapter 13. The legacy of forgiveness and the objected inheritance. The public confrontation between Ottavio and his father, Riccardo Dantas, was a watershed moment. Ottavio, armed with truth and the peace of his new life, exposed Dantas' tax crimes, the abuses of power, and his father's hypocrisy. The news shook the corporate world. Riccardo Dantas, finally unmasked, watched his empire crumble under the weight of his own transgressions. Society, which once revered him, now viewed him with contempt. The power he so cherished vanished, and he found himself alone, abandoned by all he had manipulated. Despite the pain of exposing his own father, Ottavio felt a profound liberation. The Jonas Foundation, the equation of life, received an unprecedented wave of support and donations. Dantas Tech, once a symbol of corruption, transformed into a social technology company. Under David's leadership, dedicated to creating solutions for disadvantaged communities, Ottavio's legacy would not be that of a ruthless millionaire, but of a man who had the courage to break his family's cycle of injustice and forge a new path. Based on truth and reparation, forgiveness came from unexpected places. Lara's parents, the young woman whose project was stolen, and Mariana's family. The woman who suffered abandonment sought out Ottavio. They saw the sincerity in his transformation and offered not absolution, but acceptance. In his eyes, offered his life to honor Lara's memory and to support Mariana and her family. Forgiveness was not a single act, but a continuous process of healing and service. Chapter 14. The price of freedom and the solved equation. Years passed. Ottavio Dantas, now with graying hair, was a happy and fulfilled man, though he lived a simple life, far from the luxury of his past. His fortune, transformed into social impact, had changed thousands of lives. The Jonas Foundation, the equation of life, was a global success. And Ottavio, along with Jonas, Maria, Leonel, Donna Need, and David, were its pillars. He had found freedom not in the absence of responsibilities, but in the choice to serve. Jonas, the wise homeless man, remained on the streets, his choice unwavering. He was the soul of the foundation, the constant reminder that true wisdom isn't found in books, but in experience, and that the greatest wealth lies in dignity. Ottavio visited him regularly, not as a benefactor, but as a student, seeking his guidance and sharing the foundation's success stories. The two, the ex-millionaire and the homeless man, were living proof that life, when lived with purpose, can solve the most complex of equations, that of dividing to multiply. The story ends with Ottavio, now elderly, sitting on the sidewalk where it all began, in the same spot where Jonas gave him his only meal and the phrase that changed his life. He smiles, a serene smile, and with a piece of chalk, he writes on the ground, "Life is an equation we can all solve. Love plus dignity plus service equals redemption." He had lost everything, but he had gained his soul, his family not by blood, but by heart and a purpose that transcended any fortune. Chapter 15. The Infinite Legacy. In the echo of wisdom, Ottavio Dantas' legacy and the Jonas Foundation, the equation of life transcended his own existence. The foundation continued to thrive under David and Leonel's leadership, who, inspired by Jonas and Ottavio, became prominent figures in the fight for social justice. Dantas Tech, once a symbol of greed, was now an ethical company developing technologies for the common good, proving that talent can be used to heal, not to destroy. The story of Ottavio and Jonas became a modern myth, an urban fable told from generation to generation. They were proof that humility can bring down arrogance, that forgiveness can heal the deepest wounds, and that true wealth isn't measured in billions, but in the capacity to share. The question that echoed at the beginning of Ottavio's journey: life is an equation you rich people still haven't learned to solve, to divide, was now a universal maxim, a lesson humanity was beginning to learn. The final scene of the script is a tranquil cemetery, where Jonas's tombstone rests under a tree. Inscribed, "He taught to divide." Beside it, an empty tombstone. On a sunny day, children of different ethnicities and backgrounds, with bright smiles, place flowers on the graves. They don't know the famous men, but they know their stories. They sing, in unison, a song Lionel composed, which became the Foundation's anthem. Divide, divide, and life will multiply. Love is the formula for the soul to heal. The story of Ottavio and Jonas is not an end, but a beginning, an eternal invitation for everyone to seek life's true wealth. To divide, we've reached the end of this emotional journey of redemption. If Ottavio and Jonas's story has moved you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our inspiring stories of triumph and the true value of life. Hit the like button if you believe that compassion and truth can transform the world. Share this video so more people can dive into this powerful tale and reflect on their own equations of life. Comment below. What's the biggest lesson this story taught you? Do you believe Ottavio finally found the freedom he sought?